If you're looking for a trading strategy that feels good, you're already losing. Because the truth is, what actually makes you profitable in the markets will feel uncomfortable, unnatural, and at times completely wrong. This is where most traders get it backwards. They chase comfort. They want certainty. They want to feel in control. But the market doesn't reward comfort, it rewards discipline under pressure. What I'm about to share with you isn't exciting. It's not glamorous, and you won't enjoy it. In fact, if you're doing it right, you'll doubt yourself. You'll feel tension. You'll want to quit. But that discomfort, that's the signal. Because profitability in trading isn't about doing what feels good, it's about doing what works, consistently, ruthlessly, and without emotion. So if you're ready to stop chasing feelings and start building real results, then this might be the most important shift you ever make. Most traders spend their entire journey trying to feel comfortable in the market, and that's exactly why they never break through. Comfort is seductive. It makes you feel safe, in control, and reassured. But in trading, comfort is often a signal that you're doing the wrong thing. The real edge, the one that separates profitable traders from the rest, comes from leaning into discomfort, not avoiding it. Think about it. When do you feel most comfortable? Usually when you're following the crowd, entering trades that look obvious, holding on to positions that haven't challenged you yet, or avoiding cutting a loss because you don't want to admit you're wrong. All of that feels good in the moment. But it's precisely those moments that quietly drain your account over time. Discomfort, on the other hand, shows up when you're doing what actually works. It's there when you cut a losing trade quickly, even though every part of you wants to give it just a little more room. It's there when you stick to your plan while others are chasing hype. It's there when you take a valid setup that doesn't feel perfect but meets your rules. None of this feels good. In fact, it often feels like you're making a mistake. That's the paradox. The behaviors that lead to profitability rarely provide emotional satisfaction in the moment. They feel restrictive, mechanical, even frustrating. You'll question yourself. You'll feel like you're missing out. You'll wonder if you're being too rigid or too cautious. But this is where the edge lives, in that tension between what feels right and what actually works. Most traders fail because they treat their emotions as guidance. They wait to feel confident before entering a trade. They stay in trades because hope feels better than accepting a loss. They exit winners too early because they're afraid of giving profits back. Every decision is driven by the need to feel good, and over time, that need becomes their biggest weakness. Profitable traders flip this entirely. They stop using emotions as a compass and start using them as a warning signal. When something feels too easy, too comfortable, too obvious, they become cautious. When something feels difficult but aligns with their plan, they lean in. They understand that discomfort isn't something to eliminate. It's something to manage and, in many cases, embrace. This doesn't mean acting randomly or forcing yourself into bad decisions just because they feel uncomfortable. It means recognizing that disciplined actions, like following your rules, managing risk, and executing consistently, will naturally create discomfort because they go against your instincts. And instead of running from that feeling, you learn to operate within it. Over time, your relationship with discomfort changes. It stops being something you fear and starts becoming something you respect. You begin to see it as confirmation that you're stepping outside the habits that used to hold you back. And that's when things start to shift. Because the truth is simple, if everything you're doing feels comfortable, you're probably not growing. And in trading, if you're not growing, you're falling behind. The edge isn't in finding a perfect strategy or predicting the market. The edge is in doing what most people won't, consistently choosing discipline over comfort, even when it feels wrong. Most traders like to believe they are rational, that they make decisions based on logic, analysis, and strategy. But when real money is on the line, emotion takes over far more than they realize. Fear, greed, hope, frustration, these aren't small influences, they dominate behavior. And if you allow them to dictate your actions, they will quietly sabotage everything you're trying to build. Discipline is what replaces that chaos. It's not exciting. It doesn't give you a rush. In fact, it often feels restrictive, almost boring. But that's exactly the point. Discipline removes the need to decide in the heat of the moment. It gives you a framework to operate within, regardless of how you feel. Think about what happens without it. You see a trade setting up, but you hesitate because you're unsure. By the time you enter, the opportunity has passed. Or you take a trade and it moves against you slightly. Suddenly fear creeps in and you close it early, only to watch it move exactly as you expected. Then the opposite happens. A trade goes against you, but instead of cutting it, you hold on, hoping it will turn around because accepting a loss feels worse than the potential damage of staying in. This is emotional trading. It's inconsistent, reactive, and exhausting. You're constantly adjusting, second-guessing, and chasing a sense of control that never truly comes. Over time, it leads to erratic results not because your strategy is flawed, but because your execution is. Discipline changes that entirely. It means you define your rules before the trade, not during it. You decide where you enter, where you exit, how much you risk, and under what conditions you act. And once those rules are set, your job is simple: follow them. Not when you feel confident, not when it feels right. Every single time. The challenge is that discipline often forces you to act against your instincts. Your instincts will tell you to avoid pain and chase pleasure. Discipline tells you to accept small losses quickly and hold on to winners longer, even when it feels uncomfortable. Your instincts will push you to overtrade after a loss, trying to make the money back. Discipline tells you to step back and wait for the next valid opportunity. Your instincts want action, discipline demands patience. At first, this feels unnatural. You'll question whether you're being too rigid. You'll feel like you're missing opportunities or not reacting fast enough. But over time, something important happens. Your results become more stable. The emotional swings begin to fade. You're no longer riding the highs of wins and the lows of losses with the same intensity. Instead, you operate with a level of consistency that most traders never achieve. Discipline isn't about being perfect. You will still make mistakes. You will still feel emotions. The difference is that you don't let those emotions dictate your decisions. You acknowledge them, but you don't act on them. And this is where real confidence comes from. Not from winning trades, but from knowing that you can trust yourself to follow your process, regardless of the outcome. Because in trading, you can't control the market, but you can control how you respond to it. In the end, emotion will always be there. It doesn't disappear. But it doesn't need to control you. Discipline gives you structure in an environment that has none. And once you commit to it, fully and without compromise, you stop reacting to the market and start executing with purpose. Most traders are obsessed with intensity. They think success comes from doing more trades, more screen time, more strategies, more effort packed into short bursts of motivation. They'll have days where they feel unstoppable, taking trade after trade, fully locked in, convinced this is what it takes to become profitable. And then just as quickly, that intensity fades. Doubt creeps in, discipline slips, and everything starts to unravel. This cycle is one of the biggest traps in trading because intensity feels productive. It gives you a sense that you're pushing forward, that you're working harder than everyone else. But the market doesn't reward bursts of effort. It rewards consistency, the ability to show up, follow your process, and execute the same way over and over again, regardless of how you feel. Think about it realistically. One great trading day means very little if it's followed by 3 undisciplined ones. A week of perfect execution doesn't matter if you abandon your rules the moment things get uncomfortable. The market isn't measuring you based on your best moments, it's responding to your average behavior over time. And if that behavior is inconsistent, your results will be too. Consistency is far less exciting than intensity. It doesn't come with adrenaline. It doesn't feel like you're making massive leaps forward. In fact, it often feels slow, repetitive, even frustrating. You're doing the same things, following the same rules, taking similar setups, managing risk the same way, day after day. There's no drama in it, and that's exactly why it works. Because consistency builds reliability. When you execute the same process repeatedly, you start to see patterns, not just in the market, but in your own behavior. You learn what actually works for you, not in theory, but in practice. You begin to trust your approach, not because it wins every time, but because it produces stable results over a series of trades. Intensity, on the other hand, often leads to overtrading, impulsive decisions, and emotional exhaustion. You push too hard, try to force opportunities, and end up breaking your own rules. And once that happens, it's difficult to regain control. One mistake leads to another, and before you know it, the progress you made during your focused period is gone. The irony is that many traders use intensity to compensate for a lack of consistency. They believe that if they just try harder, push more, or stay more engaged, they'll eventually break through. But trading doesn't reward effort in that way. You can work incredibly hard and still lose money if your actions aren't consistent. What actually moves the needle is your ability to repeat good behavior over time, taking valid setups, managing risk properly, cutting losses when required, letting winners play out. Not occasionally, not when you feel like it, but every single time. That's what creates an edge. And yes, it's difficult, not because it's complex, but because it's monotonous. Your mind craves excitement, novelty, and quick results. Consistency offers none of that in the short term. It requires patience, restraint, and a willingness to accept that progress will feel slow. But over time, consistency compounds. Small, disciplined actions start to stack. Mistakes become less frequent. Your decision-making becomes clearer. And most importantly, your results become more predictable. Because in the end, trading isn't about how good you can be on your best day. It's about how stable you can be on your average day, Intensity might give you moments of success, but only consistency can sustain it. Cutting losses without hesitation sounds simple when you say it out loud, but in practice it goes directly against your natural instincts. No one likes to be wrong. No one enjoys taking a loss, even a small one. And because of that, most traders hesitate at the exact moment they need to act. That hesitation is where the real damage begins. When a trade moves against you, your first reaction is rarely logical. It's emotional. You start looking for reasons to stay in. You tell yourself the market might turn. You widen your stop slightly. You convince yourself it's just noise. All of this happens in seconds, and it feels justified in the moment. But what you're really doing is avoiding the discomfort of accepting a loss. The problem is that losses don't become dangerous because they exist. They become dangerous because they grow. A small, controlled loss is part of the game. It's expected. It's manageable. But when you hesitate, when you delay the decision to exit, that small loss can quickly turn into something much larger. And once it reaches that point, it's no longer just a financial hit, it's an emotional one too. Now you're not just dealing with a losing trade, you're dealing with regret, frustration, and pressure to fix the situation. And that's when traders start making even worse decisions. They hold longer, hoping for a recovery. They add to the position, trying to average out, or they finally close the trade at a much bigger loss, only to feel the urge to jump back in immediately to make the money back. It becomes a cycle, and it starts with one simple failure: not cutting the loss when you should have. Cutting losses without hesitation requires a shift in how you think about being wrong. Instead of seeing a loss as a failure, you have to see it as a cost of doing business. Every professional trader takes losses. The difference is that they control them. They don't allow a single trade to have the power to significantly damage their account or their mindset. This is where discipline comes in again. Before you even enter a trade, you should know exactly where you're getting out if it doesn't work. That decision is made in a calm, rational state, not in the middle of the trade when emotions are running high. And once the market reaches that point, your job is not to think, analyze, or negotiate. Your job is to execute. The hesitation usually comes from doubt. What if it turns around right after I exit? And sometimes it will. That's part of trading. But staying in a losing trade because of what might happen is far more dangerous than accepting what is happening. You're trading the market as it is, not as you hope it will be. Over time, when you consistently cut losses quickly, something important happens. Your downside becomes limited. No single trade can hurt you significantly. This gives you the ability to stay in the game long enough for your edge to play out. Because profitability doesn't come from avoiding losses, it comes from managing them. It also changes your emotional state. When you know that any loss you take will be small and controlled, you trade with more clarity. You're less afraid to take valid setups because you're not risking significant damage. You're no longer attached to being right on every trade, which ironically makes you more effective. Cutting losses without hesitation isn't about being fearless. It's about being decisive. It's about accepting that you will be wrong sometimes and choosing to deal with it immediately rather than letting it grow into something worse. Because in trading, the traders who survive and eventually succeed are not the ones who avoid losses, but the ones who respect them enough to act quickly. Most traders say they trust their strategy, but the moment a trade is live, that trust disappears and their feelings take over. This is where the real problem begins. Because your feelings in trading are not designed to help you make money, they're designed to protect you from discomfort. And those are two very different things. When you rely on your feelings, your decisions become inconsistent. One moment you feel confident, so you take a trade. The next moment, doubt creeps in, so you hesitate or exit early. A trade moves slightly against you and fear tells you to close it. Another trade goes into profit, and anxiety pushes you to secure gains too quickly. Every action becomes a reaction to how you feel in that exact moment, and that constantly changes. The process, on the other hand, doesn't change. It's built on rules, structure, and repetition. It tells you when to enter, where to exit, how much to risk, and how to manage the trade. It doesn't care if you feel confident or uncertain. It doesn't react to a single outcome. It's designed to work over a series of trades, not just one. The issue is that trusting the process often feels uncomfortable, especially in the short term. You might follow your rules perfectly and still take a loss. You might execute exactly as planned and watch the market do the opposite of what you expected. In those moments, your feelings will immediately question everything. Is this really working? Should I change something? Maybe I need a better strategy. But this is where most traders go wrong. They judge the quality of their decisions based on the outcome of individual trades instead of the consistency of their execution. A good trade can lose, a bad trade can win. If you let outcomes dictate your confidence, you'll constantly be adjusting, tweaking, and second-guessing, never giving anything enough time to prove itself. Trusting the process means committing to it even when it doesn't immediately reward you. It means understanding that losses are part of the system, not a sign that it's broken. It means allowing your edge to play out over time instead of abandoning it the moment it feels uncomfortable. Your feelings will always try to pull you away from this. They'll tell you to skip trades after a loss because you're afraid. They'll push you to take extra trades after a win because you feel invincible. They'll convince you to override your rules because something feels off or feels right. And every time you listen to those impulses, you break the consistency that your process relies on. This doesn't mean ignoring your emotions completely. It means recognizing them without letting them control your actions. You can feel fear and still take a valid trade. You can feel doubt and still follow your exit rules. The goal isn't to eliminate emotion, it's to prevent it from interfering with your execution. Over time, as you stick to your process, something shifts. You stop reacting to every small movement in the market. You stop feeling the need to constantly adjust. You begin to see trading as a series of probabilities rather than a single outcome. And with that shift comes a different kind of confidence, not the emotional kind that comes and goes, but a steady confidence rooted in repetition and experience. Because in the end, your feelings are temporary and unreliable. They change with every trade, every win, every loss. But a solid process, followed consistently, gives you stability in an environment that has none. And once you learn to trust that process more than your feelings, you stop chasing certainty and start operating with discipline. Most traders believe that more thinking will lead to better results. They analyze endlessly, search for perfect confirmation, and hesitate at the moment of execution because they want to be absolutely sure. But the market doesn't reward overthinking, it punishes it. Because by the time you've convinced yourself that a trade is perfect, the opportunity is usually gone, or worse, you enter too late with a completely different risk profile. Execution is what matters. Not ideas, not analysis, not opinions, execution. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you fail to act on it consistently, it's worthless. And this is where most traders struggle. They spend hours studying charts, marking levels, preparing scenarios, but when it's time to actually place the trade, they freeze. Doubt creeps in. What if this one fails? What if I'm wrong again? And in that hesitation, they either miss the trade entirely or enter in a completely different way than planned. Overthinking creates hesitation, and hesitation destroys consistency. Every extra layer of thought in the moment of execution pulls you further away from your plan. Instead of following your rules, you start negotiating with yourself. You look for additional confirmation. You wait for one more candle. You adjust your entry slightly, and all of this might seem small, but over time, it completely distorts your results. The irony is that most of the thinking you need to do in trading should happen before the trade, not during it. You define your setup, your risk, your entry, and your exit in advance. That's where analysis belongs. Once the conditions are met, your job is no longer to think, it's to execute. This is uncomfortable because execution removes the illusion of control. When you're analyzing, you feel like you're in charge, like you're actively improving your chances. But once you enter a trade, the outcome is uncertain. And that uncertainty is what triggers overthinking. You try to manage it by constantly reassessing, adjusting, and interfering with the trade, but in reality, you're just reacting emotionally. Executing without overthinking doesn't mean being careless or impulsive. It means trusting the work you've already done. It means accepting that no trade is guaranteed and that your edge plays out over a series of trades, not a single one. It means understanding that hesitation won't eliminate risk, it will only create inconsistency. When you learn to execute properly, something shifts. You become faster, not in a reckless way, but in a decisive one. You see your setup and you act. No internal debate, no second guessing, just clear structured action based on predefined rules. And because of that, your results start to reflect your actual strategy, not your emotional reactions. Overthinking also leads to missed opportunities, which creates frustration. You watch trades play out exactly as you anticipated, but you weren't in them because you hesitated. That frustration builds, and eventually it pushes you into impulsive decisions, taking trades you shouldn't, chasing the market, trying to make up for what you missed. It becomes a cycle, and it all starts with failing to execute when you should have. The goal is not to remove thinking entirely, it's to move it to the right place. Think deeply before the trade. Plan everything you can. But once the moment comes, simplify your role. See it, take it, manage it according to your rules. Because in trading, success doesn't come from having the best ideas. It comes from acting on good ideas consistently. And the traders who win are not the ones who think the most. They're the ones who execute the best, without hesitation and without unnecessary doubt.